As cloud technology transforms our industries and our world, city agencies are under increasing pressure to modernize citizen services and meet the expectations of the digital generation. Joining us to share how one city is achieving this through an innovative new app are the City of Richmond, Virginia's Director for Citizen Services and Response, Pete Breil, and Senior Vice President, AvePoint Public Sector, Tarek Shamounki. Welcome to the summit. And I want to start with the poll that you guys provided, which is, how are you currently managing citizen services? Is it completely manual, somewhat automated, fully automated, or fully automated with machine learning? So go ahead and take that poll, and we will get the results back before the end of the session. So, Pete, let's do a before and after, because before RVA 311, how did it work? How would citizen services work?
Sure. Well, first, let me tell you a little bit about 311. So there's this N11 system that we have throughout the U.S. There's 911 that everyone's familiar with for emergency services. There's 411, which is utilities. 311 is for non-emergency services. So we are solely focused on providing great services and access to services for our citizens. And before RVA 311, we had RVA 1. It was much more limited in what it could do. It did not interface with our fulfillment systems very effectively. So it was difficult to get those requests to the departments. It had a very limited subset of services that people could access any way other than phone if they wanted to self-service.
Were people calling, or were they emailing?
Yeah, 99% calls. And then you had very simple things like potholes and whatnot that you could do in other ways. So very simple, and there was no way to look to see the status of your request or anything like that.
So let's talk about the after, which has probably been pretty dramatic. What does RVA 311 do that you didn't used to be able to do?
Right. So now citizens can access not only through phone, but through apps as well as an online portal, our citizen portal. They can look up any request that is public online or through their app. They can look at their specific requests. They can see the status of any public request as well as any comments by city employees. And we now do about 150 different services that are accessible through the system, as well as additional services that you can get through calling for information. That's
pretty cool. Tarek, how did you get involved with this?
So we built a solution called Citizen Services that's sitting on the cloud, and in this case on Azure, and leverages Dynamics. And we partnered with the City of Richmond to actually help them achieve that vision, go from the first stage before and the stage after, but enable them to give a platform that's going to grow with them and be configured as they grow in the city. And so the idea behind it was to give the users, the citizens, a user-friendly way to submit these requests. And nowadays with the mobile, everybody's on their smartphones, but also enable them to use other facets. They can submit their requests and see the request being taken into effect in real time. And then they wanted the city workers to be able to manage those requests fairly quickly through intelligent mapping of those requests. And the cloud affords us that ability. And the city also wanted then to measure that success and see if we're addressing these services much faster with higher level of quality. It enables the citizens to be happier.
When you first rolled this out, were there any hiccups? I mean, like, what happened in the initial phase?
It actually went pretty smoothly. I think the thing we are still learning our way into is that aspect of citizen-centric design. So I think we still have some configuration to do to make our apps really inviting to our citizens. But the beauty of this system is that it's very configurable. So now that we have the system in place, we can create or delete services at any time. We can completely change how they're presented to citizens, and we have the data to see which are most popular to make them easier to access So there's just a lot that we can do with it now.
That was exactly what I was going to ask, is you now know, you have data about what people are actually accessing. And what is that? What would you say are the most in-demand services?
It's interesting. Our top 10 services out of the 150 or more that we ask for are actually about 80% of all of our requests. There are a lot of requests for social services, for questions about taxes, not surprisingly,
Sure.
and certainly public works around things like road repair and maintenance, the standard things you would expect. But
Really, social services surprises me. Like asking for social workers or for.
Exactly. Yeah, so for any kinds of questions about benefits are fairly complex, and some citizens have multiple benefit needs. So always having somewhere to go to ask those questions. And that, interestingly, is those types of questions, particularly social services and finance, are the ones where they want to talk to somebody rather than use an app. So that's great. We know where it's coming from now. We can see that. We can tailor our app to the things that people feel comfortable using an app for, where they want to talk to somebody in person. We have that data, and we can be ready for them.
And does the app allow them to go to the next step and hit 0 or something and talk to someone?
Not directly, but it's a very straightforward process to get there.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
And how open, Tarek, did you make this? Because, there's obviously quite a range, and you could have done it many different ways. How open did you choose to do it, and why?
Well, the design by nature is it's a platform, so that it's truly a case management system that anybody could leverage. It works brilliantly for cities because they're at all different stages of their digital transformation. So some of them might be just at the beginning stage where they're just dipping their toe in the water. But because it's built on the cloud, we can then leverage in the future capabilities for IoT learning, machine learning and IoT capabilities, enable them to expand as they get sensors connected for lights and what other aspects. So it's completely scalable and for their needs. Right.
But it helps with government transparency too, wouldn't
Absolutely.
it? I mean, the more open you make it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and that was one of the tenets that we had coming into this, and one of the reasons that we love the AvePoint solution was we were able to, as I mentioned before, through what the citizens can see, really create a very transparent environment where the citizens could hold us accountable, and that has been one of the major tenets of our Mayor LeVar Stoney's One Richmond policy, providing this access and accountability. And that accountability rests on transparency. So having that transparency into requests, the status, the ability to create reporting for the administration, for city council, break it down by district, so everyone has the information that they need, whether you're a councilman, a member of the leader of a department, or a citizen, to get the information you need to continue to improve service delivery. It's all there. It's really great.
We have poll results.
Oh, cool.
Aren't you excited? We had asked, how are you currently managing citizen services? And most cities and states said somewhat automated. Okay, 80%, which is an overwhelming majority. That's very interesting. And of course, the second highest was still completely manual.
Right.
Reaction to that?
Well, it doesn't surprise me. I think there's a lot of cities with apps out there, but they're not leveraging the cloud, and they're not connecting into the future of what they can be doing. And we see the technology growing, but the technology is designed to, at the end of the day, democratize the way the citizens engage with government, and it will change the level playing field, but it just needs to have the flexibility to grow.
What do you think is the biggest, roadblock to have being more automated?
I think it's just education, understanding that the technology is out there for you to do new with less and more with less, and be able to leverage it. Like the City of Richmond, what they've done is to embrace that and go through the cultural shifts which I know takes a long time, and there's a lot of growing pains with that. But it's to realize that this technology is out there and that you can grow with it.
What's the growing pains? I mean, it's not on the user end, is it, that the growing pains are?
No, actually, users are hungry for this, particularly
Right.
citizens. If you think of the other users on the city side, I think some of the growing pains are just generically the change management of we've done things a certain way for a long time, it's worked for us, but it's not necessarily transparent. So it's bringing that conversation to the leaders within our city departments about not only do we want to be great at execution, but we want to be great at communication so people know throughout the process. One of the conversations I regularly have is it's not that we're doing a great job, it's that people have an expectation. And that expectation setting is, I think, a little bit different from a cultural change point of view, something we really need to bring forward. And the other thing that's a hurdle, quite honestly, is, and I think this is true for many municipalities, each department has their own system for managing those processes. So it's melding them all together and being able through middleware to connect to all these so that they don't have to leave their system. They can continue to work in it, but we can send requests that get translated into their system and translated back as status for us, makes it much more seamless.
Well, and it makes sense because, I mean, yes, it's easy to talk about siloing, but how to run a public utility is very, very different than how to run a social service agency, right? And so bringing that together under one roof, I'm sure you're going to have department managers going, what?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's really, there's a continuous healthy tension between the needs for transparency and getting information to our citizens and making sure that our agencies are getting the information they need to be able to deliver great service.
What about the reaction that you've gotten from end users? What has, since deploying this, you've probably gotten some key feedback.
We certainly have. A lot of it is positive. A lot of it, some of it is also very eye-opening for us as we think about it and as we see it, because it brings to light things we hadn't really thought about and ways that we can do things better going forward. So some of it, quite honestly, is a little bit painful when you read it, but it's very insightful because...
Really? Like what?
Well, I mean, we made it simple as well. They can now provide a star rating just like you would with Uber.
Oh.
Right? And so really you could get citizen sentiment fairly easily and then be able to report on it all the way to full transparency to the mayor. And he can feel how happy his city, or if the services are hitting home and having results.
Does it hit you like, I only got a 1 star that time? Do you ever feel that?
Right.
We do. And it's definitely one of those, it's great for us to get that feedback because we know where we need to do better. And we didn't know that before.
Even though it hurts, it's great to get it, right?
Yeah, because otherwise you can't improve.
Right.
So you're absolutely right.
But what about, it's one thing to build it, but then, it's making people aware of it, number one, and then getting people to adopt it and use it very, very regularly. How do you do that?
I think one of the key things to remember is that it's not something where you just build it and they will come. There's continuous communication. Cities are dynamic. The things that we need to communicate are dynamic. So you need to have the resources there to continue to update and improve, not just build it and then leave it. And that's, I think, something that as that becomes more ingrained in cities across the country, not just ours, will make this so much more powerful because then we can adapt as the city changes and as the information we need to get to our citizens changes.
So what are the next steps that you see coming? This is great that you've done this. Where do you see this going in another few years? Tarek?
So, to Peter's point, we were talking about this as well, and especially with the adoption of the citizens, leveraging technology to make it simpler and easier for things to flow would be the key, right? So IoT and machine learning is going to be a huge mover and shaker in this because as you get, for example, connected lights into the city, you're going to have the lights themselves self-report and provide feedback. And then the city can take preventative maintenance and proactive measures to fix those before light ever goes out. So the citizen doesn't even feel it, but the street is always lit. There's safety aspects that are associated with that. People are not falling and hurting themselves. And that changes the game because then they feel their city is always on top of things. And technology is going to help you do that. Same thing with potholes. You'll have machine learning tell you there's a whole aspect of, there's a higher level of potholes on this stretch of road because of extra traffic or water runoff and all that. And you can run those on the back end through the system to help transform the experience for the citizen.
Interesting. So it's almost like getting less feedback means you're addressing it sooner.
Yeah.
Which is
you don't want to force it on them. You want it to be organic.
Yeah. Pete, do you have anything else to add?
No, absolutely. It's funny that Tarek mentioned the streetlights because I was walking out of work just a couple of days ago with the division head for streetlights, and he was talking about implementing, replacing all the streetlights with LED, IoT streetlights so they could start to do exactly this. So it's not just pie in the sky.
It's happening.
And it's definitely a spectrum. So it's something that we continue to learn our way into, but now we've got the tools to be able to do that. So.
Great job. Hey, this sounds really exciting, and I think that more cities will be following in your footsteps. Great job. Thanks for being on our summit and telling us about it, too.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.